A young girl vanishes from a close-knit community.
Where is 8-year-old Sandra Cantu?
Parents are in a state of panic as the police search for the missing girl.
Ahorita los niños no salen a jugar.
Even today, we don't let our children play out in the front yard, only in the backyard.
We're
We're all searching frantically for 8-year-old Sandra Cantu.
Sandra Renee Cantu, born on March 8, 2001, was the daughter of Maria Chavez and Daniel Cantu, a couple of Hispanic origin. Sandra lived with her mother, grandparents, and 3 older siblings, 2 sisters aged 20 and 11, and a 15-year-old brother, in a trailer park named Orchard Estates. This park, consisting of about 100 homes, was known as a safe and family-friendly community in the city of Tracy. Sandra's father, Daniel, resided in Mexico and had limited contact with her. Tracy is a city in Northern California with a population of around 80,000 people. It is considered a suburb of the San Francisco Bay Area, with roughly 70% of its workforce employed in Silicon Valley, home to many emerging and global technology companies. Despite this, the city maintains strong agricultural roots, with crops such as tomatoes, alfalfa, and peaches. In the 1970s, Tracy had only 15,000 residents, but it grew in popularity and population as the Bay Area expanded. Sandra's family settled in this growing city. Sandra, a second grader at Melville Jacobson Elementary School, had long, light brown hair with golden highlights from spending a lot of time in the sun. She was a sweet, innocent, bright, and amiable child who loved visiting neighborhood friends, doing cartwheels, and reading children's books. Her friendly nature allowed her to make friends easily, and she was always ready to help. Her favorite character was Hannah Montana. On Friday, March 27, 2009, after school, the 8-year-old visited a friend's house before returning home around 4 p.m. to check in with her family. She then went out again, saying she was going to play at another friend's house. It was common for neighborhood kids to play at each other's homes and in the open spaces of the park, which included a basketball court and a pool. However, that evening was unusual because Sandra did not return home as expected, which was highly unusual for her. She always knew to check in with her mother by dinner time. The family grew increasingly anxious when they discovered that the friend Sandra mentioned was not home that afternoon. Sandra had never left the trailer park area before. At 7:53 p.m., the family, now very worried, called 911 to report Sandra missing. The police began their search at Sandra's home and expanded throughout the neighborhood. They collected footage from a surveillance camera near the family's residence, which showed Sandra crossing the street in front of her house. This video was broadcasted on national news channels to aid in the search. The police conducted a thorough search of the mobile home park and interviewed all residents but found no leads. The FBI joined the search over the weekend of March 28 and 29. Police dogs, rescue teams, all-terrain vehicles, and a California Highway Patrol helicopter were all involved in the intense search effort. More than 250 people from 13 different agencies participated. Divers searched a nearby lake, but found nothing. Officers went door to door in the park, questioning every resident and inspecting all vehicles. The search continued without pause. The authorities even offered a $22,000 reward for information about the case, but no traces of Sandra were found. The first suspect was a local man named Frank, who had been seen kissing Sandra on the lips 2 years earlier at the local pool when she was 6. Frank, about 60 years old, had been spotted by Sandra's grandmother in 2007, brushing her hair away and kissing her on the lips. The family had reported this incident at the time. With Sandra's disappearance, Frank was questioned by investigators. He claimed he had nothing to do with the incident and had kissed her only to be nice. The police seized some of his CDs as part of the investigation. Detectives also interviewed Sandra's father, Daniel Cantu, but he lived in Mexico and had minimal contact with his daughter, having not seen her for over a year. The tragic discovery came 10 days after Sandra's disappearance, on April 6, 2009. Agricultural workers draining a reservoir a few miles from the neighborhood, a task they perform twice a year, made a shocking find. At the bottom of the reservoir, measuring about 150 meters long and 30 meters wide, they found a suitcase. Inside was Sandra's body, curled in a fetal position. She was wearing the same clothes she had on when she went missing: a Hello Kitty t-shirt gifted by a neighbor for her birthday and black leggings. The horrifying crime stunned the residents of Tracy, leaving Sandra's family devastated. For days, dozens of people left flowers, posters, candles, and stuffed animals in her memory. An autopsy revealed that Sandra had been beaten and sexually assaulted with a foreign object before being asphyxiated. Toxicology reports showed she had ingested a powerful sedative. The suitcase was identified as belonging to Melissa Huckabee. FBI experts developed a preliminary profile of the suspect, believing it to be a white male between 25 and 40 years old, with a criminal history involving sexual assault or child pornography, who kidnapped for sexual purposes and then killed. They initially focused on all the men in the trailer park, but later turned their attention to a completely different suspect when they identified the suitcase's owner. Playing in the enemy's house, Melissa Huckabee was born on February 23, 1981, in Orange County, California. She was the eldest of 9 grandchildren. At 28 years old, Melissa was a volunteer Sunday school teacher at the Tracy Baptist Church, where her grandfather served as pastor. She grew up in Southern California and lived between Tracy and Orange County after high school. As an adult, she faced difficult times and struggled to find and keep a stable job. In 2002, Melissa Huckabee filed a restraining order against an ex-boyfriend, accusing him of harassment, death threats, and assaulting her grandfather. That chapter soon ended, and in August 2003, while 5 months pregnant, she married her then-boyfriend Johnny Huckabee. That same year, Melissa declared bankruptcy with debts totaling $26,300, including thousands of dollars in medical bills and credit card expenses. Her struggles continued as her marriage did not work out. They separated in August 2004 and their divorce was finalized in September 2005. Divorce documents revealed that Melissa accused Johnny of kidnapping their daughter and domestic violence, charges which Johnny vehemently denied. Despite this, Melissa gained full custody of their daughter, Madison. Melissa, always a loving mother with a strong religious upbringing, lived in Southern California, where she worked as an event planner and studied criminology at a community technical institute. She loved crime dramas, especially the popular series Law and Order. Despite her efforts, Melissa led a solitary life and had a history of mental health issues, including severe conditions such as borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. According to her family, she struggled to raise her daughter alone and sometimes experienced episodes of depression. Additionally, she had a history of self-harm, cutting her ankles to balance her mind. She was prescribed several potent medications, including benzodiazepines, amphetamines, and an antidepressant. Melissa also took furosemide, a diuretic used for heart problems and hypertension. In 2007, Melissa was considered a person of interest by police in connection with 2 fires in La Palma, California, about 300 miles from Tracy, but she was never charged. In June 2008, her grandparents asked Melissa to help them pack for a move to Tracy, changing her plans. She had lived in Tracy years earlier and decided to settle there again with Madison, moving into her grandparents' trailer. Sandra Cantu lived in the same neighborhood, just 5 houses away. In January 2009, a 7-year-old girl went missing for several hours in the trailer park, prompting a police report and an intense search that lasted several hours. Melissa eventually brought the girl home, but according to the family, the child appeared drugged. She could barely speak and cried incessantly, unable to stand or walk without assistance, collapsing each time she tried. Her parents took her to the hospital where tests revealed benzodiazepines in her bloodstream, medications typically prescribed as sedatives or to induce sleep, alleviate anxiety, muscle spasms, and prevent seizures. The family feared the girl had been sexually abused, but medical examinations showed no evidence of this. A Tracy police officer interrogated Melissa, who reacted indignantly to the accusation. At the same time, it was revealed that the girl's mother had drug problems. With no evidence against Melissa, the case did not proceed. Another peculiar incident highlighted Melissa's odd behavior. She told a 37-year-old man she occasionally dated that she was pregnant, leading him to decide to marry her. Melissa even had the phone number of a bridal shop written in her notebook. On March 2, 2009, the couple met at the church, where Melissa gave Daniel a drink that he found to have a strange taste. He could not remember anything after that night. The police later found Daniel unconscious near a fast food restaurant. He woke up in jail but never reported Melissa. This incident occurred about 3 weeks before Sandra's death. On the day Sandra disappeared, while the police were searching the area, Melissa sent a text message to Maria, Sandra's mother, asking her to inform the police that something had been stolen from her house around 4 p.m. She added that she wasn't sure if this information would impact the investigation. Earlier, Melissa had called the manager of the trailer park to report a stolen black suitcase she claimed to have left outside her home. She even mentioned the stolen suitcase in media interviews. The day after Sandra vanished, during a vigil for her, a very agitated and tearful Melissa approached investigators, saying she found a note on the ground. The note, filled with spelling errors, read, "Cantu locked in a suitcase thrown in water on Bucketty Road and Whitehall Road. Witness." Suddenly, Melissa's demeanor changed, and she became completely calm, which caught the attention of the officers. At the time of Sandra's death, Melissa was on probation for a 2006 theft in Los Angeles, but she had no record of violent behavior. 2 days before Sandra's body was discovered, Melissa was admitted to a local hospital, claiming she had accidentally swallowed a razor blade while sleepwalking, which seemed to be a suicide attempt. Before Sandra's body was found, Melissa was not a primary suspect. She was interviewed several times, but the police believed she was merely seeking attention and had no evidence linking her to Sandra's disappearance. However, everything changed when Sandra's body was found in the very suitcase Melissa had reported stolen. Investigators then began to scrutinize Melissa's behavior more closely. Another crucial clue emerged when a retired Marine and his wife informed the police that they had seen Melissa in her SUV at the irrigation pond on their property at Bucketty and Whitehall Streets between 5:30 and 6 p.m. on March 27th. The couple recognized Melissa from television and noted that she appeared distracted and in a hurry when they saw her. Melissa had told them she stopped there because she needed to urinate. The police quickly continued reviewing the surveillance footage from the camera outside Sandra's house and observed that the girl was walking towards Melissa's house at 3:54 p.m. on March 27th. The camera also captured Melissa's SUV driving in the opposite direction 8 minutes later. Soon after, Melissa called the neighborhood manager to report a stolen suitcase. Around 5:30 p.m., a surveillance camera in the church parking lot recorded Melissa driving towards the irrigation pond, and half an hour later, she was seen returning. New evidence surfaced at the church when FBI agents conducted a thorough search and found a metal rolling pin in the kitchen with a blood stain and a bent handle. DNA analysis confirmed the blood matched Sandra's. They also discovered that the cord used to close the suitcase was the same type missing from the blinds in the Sunday school classroom. Investigators interviewed Melissa's grandfather and collected several items from the family home. On a computer at the house, they found a news article from September 2008 about Diverse finding a suitcase containing the remains of a missing 4-year-old girl. On April 9, 2009, Melissa was discharged from the hospital at 7 a.m. Later, she went to the police station for another round of questioning. After an hour, she was asked to return the next day. On April 10th, she underwent 6 hours of intense interrogation. Over time, Melissa broke down, transitioning from calm to distressed. She eventually admitted to causing Sandra's death, but fabricated an elaborate story of accidental death and panic. Melissa claimed that on that day, she intended to take the suitcase to the church, but encountered Sandra and decided to play hide and seek. She said she told Sandra to get into the suitcase, then zipped it up. According to her bizarre account, Melissa left her keys and cell phone, drove to the church, and forgot about Sandra. When she returned and opened the suitcase, she found the girl lifeless. She claimed she tried to revive her and placed a small towel on her forehead to cool her. Panicking, Melissa said she then decided to dump the suitcase in the reservoir. The story was obviously not credible, leading to Melissa's detention in the county jail. Initially, she broke down in tears but soon regained her composure. 4 days after her arrest, Melissa was charged with murder with special circumstances of rape with a foreign object, lewd acts with a minor, and murder during a kidnapping. According to the prosecutor's charges, Sandra's death was premeditated and malicious following sexual abuse. The police believed Sandra was heading to Melissa's house to play, as seen in the surveillance footage, and was killed shortly after arriving. However, the police could not establish a motive for the crime. The community was shocked by the news. It was hard to believe that a local resident, a mother whose child played with other neighborhood kids, could commit such a brutal act. Melissa even received death threats, prompting heightened security measures during her court appearances. The trial was marked by shock and disbelief. Melissa appeared in court for the reading of the charges, wearing a red prison jumpsuit and shackles. She had marks on her forehead, apparently self-inflicted, and she cried and trembled as the judge listed the charges. Given the nature of the accusations, she faced either the death penalty or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. During the hearing, Melissa's defense requested a court order for a medical evaluation of the accused and a gag order to prevent case details from influencing the jury. Many of Sandra's and Melissa's family members wept during the hearing, with immense pain evident, especially when the charge of rape was mentioned. Melissa reacted strongly, closing her eyes and stifling a sob. Her father expressed that the family was in shock and did not recognize Melissa as their own. Her ex-husband stated that although Melissa had struggled with emotional issues and had been medicated, he never believed she could be violent. He was utterly astonished by the charges against her. When he saw her in court, he did not recognize her. Johnny had no further contact with Melissa or their daughter and sought custody after Melissa's incarceration. He remarried and had other children. Following the charges, there were at least 3 hearings in which Melissa refused to plead guilty or not guilty, delaying the judicial process. Finally, in June, she pleaded not guilty. In August, the district attorney added more charges related to drugging a 7-year-old girl in 2007 and her ex-boyfriend Daniel in March 2009. In April 2010, the defense requested the exhumation of Sandra's body for a second autopsy, but eventually withdrew the request. The county's chief medical examiner explained that relevant samples had been preserved for independent analysis, should the defense wish to determine if Sandra had been raped. Finally, on May 10, 2010, nearly a year after pleading not guilty in a routine pre-trial hearing, 29-year-old Melissa changed her plea. She pleaded guilty to first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances of kidnapping. Melissa made a deal with the prosecution to drop the other charges against her, including lewd acts with a minor, rape, and drugging a 7-year-old girl and her ex-boyfriend. By admitting guilt, she aimed to avoid a potential death sentence. After the gag order was lifted, more details about how Melissa killed Sandra emerged. Based on the pathologist's report, the prosecutor stated that Sandra was suffocated with a piece of cloth soaked in alcohol. Authorities also found a blood-stained piece of fabric tied around Sandra's head and knotted with a rope. The cause of death was homicidal asphyxiation. According to prosecution documents, Melissa sedated Sandra, took her to the church, and sexually assaulted her with a foreign object, apparently the rolling pin that was found. Ultimately, Melissa was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On the day of her sentencing, she could only say she did not understand why she committed the horrific crime. She acknowledged that she would have to struggle with that question for the rest of her life. Sobbing, she apologized to Sandra's family, admitting she should never have taken Sandra from them. Melissa said she owed them an explanation, but still couldn't comprehend her actions. She also stated that she would live with the fact that she killed a sweet, innocent girl like Sandra for the rest of her life. That day, Melissa denied raping Sandra. She told Sandra's mother that Sandra did not suffer and that there was no sexual abuse. She asked for her forgiveness, although she admitted she couldn't imagine forgiving someone who harmed her own child. However, Melissa's claims were contradicted by the pathologist's report, which revealed that Sandra had a cut on her lower lip, an abrasion on her elbow, and injuries to her genital area. Toxicology tests also found traces of a medication used to treat anxiety disorders in Sandra's body. It was also proven that Melissa had written the note indicating where Sandra's body was located in the suitcase. The lingering mystery remains. Why did she do it? Melissa's history of mental disorders seems key. She was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which affects how people feel about themselves and others, causing significant problems in everyday life. Those with the disorder often experience intense fear, impulsivity, and frequent mood swings. The prosecutor in the case speculated that Melissa killed Sandra simply to gain attention. The prosecutor suspected that Madison might also have been a victim of her mother. Madison had a history of frequent illnesses requiring hospital care. Moreover, Melissa had a record of self-harm and setting fires, and had verbally or psychologically attacked others to draw attention. According to the prosecution, after the murder, she achieved her goal of being the center of attention. Another theory suggested that jealousy was the motive, as Sandra was loved by everyone, whereas Madison, who meant everything to Melissa, did not garner the same admiration. These, however, are speculations. Investigators are certain it was a premeditated crime, and they believe Melissa had been practicing by drugging the other 7-year-old girl and her ex-boyfriend before ultimately killing Sandra. Melissa's case is notable not only for its cruelty, but also because it is rare for women to commit such crimes. Only between 5% and 15% of sexual predators are women. Furthermore, they rarely commit sexual offenses against children, and when they do, they are generally accomplices rather than perpetrators. Women are typically seen as nurturing and less threatening, so images of women accused of sexual abuse are particularly shocking to our sensibilities. According to the United States Department of Justice, approximately 1 in 10 homicides is committed by women. When women kill, it is more likely that their victims are close to them, such as their children, boyfriends, or spouses. The traditional role of women is to care, not to kill, and when a woman commits murder, it is more often in self-defense or due to some form of mental illness. Sandra's case defied all these paradigms, and Melissa's motivation for ending the child's life remains a mystery. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations. On a cold evening in November 2021, Bobby Ann McLeod, a young woman from Plymouth, England, was waiting alone at a bus stop, intending to catch a bus to the city center to meet her friends. Dressed for a night out, she stood by the roadside, unaware of the fate that awaited her. As the minutes ticked by, the expected bus came and went, but Bobby Ann was nowhere to be found. Bobby Ann McLeod was born in 2003 in Plymouth, a lively coastal town in the southwest of England. She grew up there with her parents, Donna and Adrian McLeod, and her older brother Lee. The McLeods were a tight-knit family, always making an effort to show each family member their personal worth and importance to the family harmony. Besides the love they shared, the parents instilled strong values in their children like responsibility and respect. This probably explains why there was no competition between the siblings for their parents' affection and attention. This situation helped Bobby Ann and Lee forge a real sibling bond, without the usual rivalry for the spotlight at home. This doesn't mean they were angels or never fought. They had their typical sibling squabbles, but their affection for each other was clear to those around them. Bobby Ann and Lee were lucky to live in Plymouth, a place with a rich history dating back centuries, known for its monumental buildings and stunning seafront that often impress visitors. Surrounded by such a positive environment, Bobby Ann thrived, becoming a popular and cheerful person, always with a bright smile on her face. People who knew her from high school described her as a pretty girl with fair skin, long hair, not very tall, and with a delicate demeanor. Her kindness, loyalty, and willingness to help others made her a great friend to many. Like many teenagers, Bobby Ann was drawn to the rebelliousness of alternative rock and its provocative lyrics. She listened to artists and bands like Pink Floyd, Nirvana, Queen, and even the controversial rapper Eminem. Despite the loud music that challenged the norms, Bobby Ann remained the sweet girl everyone knew. She loved watching Disney movies, with Lilo and Stitch being her favorite, fascinated by the blue alien, her favorite color. At school, she was known for her artistic talent and creativity. She was always motivated and clear about what she wanted in life. One of her goals was to graduate from high school, and upon achieving that, she aimed for higher education. She entered university aspiring to become an interior designer. Around this time, she also experienced young love, starting a relationship with a local boy a year younger than her. They made a cute couple, got along well, and shared many friends. Donna and Adrian, as parents, and Lee, as the older brother, approved of the relationship, seeing that the young couple didn't neglect their responsibilities because of love. In fact, since they were all busy with studies during the week, they made sure to plan time together on weekends. So, on Saturday, November 20th, 2021, nobody at the McLeod's home was surprised when Bobby Ann said she would go out with her boyfriend, keeping up with their routine of nurturing their romance. They had plans to meet some friends at 8 p.m. in the city center. She had to leave home well in advance to account for the travel distance and the need to catch a bus. It was around 5:45 p.m. when the young girl bid her father goodbye, told him she loved him, promised to be back at the agreed time, and left for the bus stop. She had a 4-minute walk to the nearest bus stop at the end of her street, a route she was familiar with. Between 6:05 and 6:15 p.m., some passersby spotted her standing at the stop, looking up and down the street waiting for the bus. Like any girl her age, while waiting, she used her mobile phone and checked her social media. She took a selfie and posted it on her story, mentioning how cold she was feeling. At the same time, Cody Ackland, a promising musician from Plymouth aged 24, was in the area. Little is known about Cody's early life, other than he was the son of David and Helen Ackland, born in June 1997 in Germany, where his father, a former military man, was stationed. After his parents divorced during his childhood, he lived with his mother in Plymouth, close to the bus stop where Bobby Ann was waiting. Although Cody attended the same high school as Bobby Ann, their 6-year age difference meant they likely never met there. After school, he worked various jobs, but music was his passion, leading him to become an indie rock band's lead guitarist and songwriter. To those who knew him, he was a nice guy making a name in the local music scene, with no history of violence or trouble with the law. However, his bandmates noticed his tendency towards depression and a not-so-cheerful temperament, which was starkly different from his energetic stage person. Unknown to many, Cody harbored interests far removed from the music world, and behind his friendly and sometimes melancholic exterior lurked a much darker side. In secret, Cody had developed a bizarre fascination with serial killers from around the world, and even kept a list of dangerous individuals he admired. Among his favorites were Joseph James D'Angelo, Andre Chikatilo, Ivan Milat, Fred West, and Tommy Lynn Sells, all notorious for their heinous minds, but topping Cody's dark list was none other than Ted Bundy. This criminal had kidnapped, sexually assaulted, and murdered about 30 women in the 1970s in the United States. After being convicted for the trail of terror he left behind, Bundy was executed in 1989. With his criminal idol in mind, Cody got into his car and, in a twist of fate that would prove deadly for Bobby Ann, spotted her at the bus stop. The exact details of how he approached her remain unclear, but it's likely she didn't see him as a threat due to his unassuming appearance. Taking advantage of the secluded spot, Cody struck her on the head with a hammer, the blow causing her to collapse. He tried to flee, but upon reaching his car, he noticed she was trying to get up. He returned to the scene, dragged her to his vehicle, and forcibly placed her inside, despite her incapacitated state. In the McLeod family, there was a rule that whoever left home should inform the family upon reaching their destination. This simple act provided peace of mind. That's why, when an hour and a half had passed since Bobby Ann left and Donna hadn't heard from her daughter, she started to worry. She texted to ask if Bobby Ann was okay and if she had reached her meeting spot with her boyfriend. With no reply from Bobby Ann and her phone going unanswered, which was out of character, the family grew anxious. By 8 p.m., her boyfriend, who was waiting for her at their planned meetup spot, was surprised by her absence, as punctuality was one of Bobby Ann's notable traits. As time slowly ticked by without her arrival, he, trying to remain patient, stayed put, but eventually gave in to his nerves and began calling her. His worry deepened with each unanswered ring. About an hour later, he called the McLeod residence to ask if Bobby Ann was there. This call escalated the family's anxiety, as no one knew her whereabouts, and all attempts to reach her on her mobile phone had failed. Donna and Adrian couldn't just sit by idly, so they started calling Bobby Ann's friends one by one, only to sadly find out that no one knew where she was. Although they hoped nothing bad had happened, deep down they feared the worst. Without further delay, they went to the police and reported her missing. It was after 9 p.m. The next day, November 21st, 2021, the police launched a search operation in the area, joined by the McLeod family, friends, and volunteer neighbors. They also distributed flyers throughout the city featuring Bobby Ann's photo and contact numbers for any sightings. Her disappearance was widely reported on social media and local news outlets. One of the most heartfelt appeals came from her brother Lee, who pleaded on social media for everyone in Plymouth to help search for his little sister. He urged anyone with any information about Bobby Ann to come forward, as he desperately wanted her back home. The police tried to trace the young girl's path from her house to the bus stop, but found nothing noteworthy. Knowing she planned to take a bus to the city center, they inquired with the bus service to see if she had boarded any of their vehicles, but this lead quickly went nowhere. However, during interviews with locals, the police received a crucial tip from a resident who had passed by the bus stop the previous afternoon and seen Bobby Ann there, around the time she took her last social media photo. This confirmed that she had reached the bus stop and stayed there for some time, giving investigators a starting point. Upon searching the nearby area, officers found a pair of AirPods behind the bus shelter, later confirmed by Donna and Adrian to belong to Bobby Ann. The area around the bus stop was cordoned off with yellow tape, and the police conducted a thorough inspection, even getting on their knees to search for any potential evidence. The search extended to all nearby streets. Since Bobby Ann never boarded the bus and her AirPods were found close to the bus stop, authorities considered the possibility that she might have been abducted or attacked during a robbery attempt. Believing public involvement was crucial in gathering information to find the missing student, the authorities turned to the media, calling on anyone with even the slightest information related to the case to come forward to the nearest police station. The detective of the case provided a detailed description of the missing teenager, 18 years old, slim build with light brown, shoulder-length straight hair, and green eyes, wearing ear piercings. He mentioned that, according to her family, she was last seen wearing a gray sweater, black ripped jeans, fishnet stockings, and light-colored sneakers. He also directed a message to Bobby Ann herself, urging her to contact the police if she heard the appeal. He emphasized that she wasn't in trouble. They just needed to know she was safe. Another task for the investigators was to track her mobile phone, which led them to the city's outskirts, though they couldn't pinpoint the exact location. However, luck struck that same day. A bus driver on the route near the bus stop where Bobby Ann vanished handed over her phone to the police. He explained that on November 20th at 7:15 p.m., a local found the phone and an empty AirPods case at the same stop used by Bobby Ann. When a bus arrived at 7:23 p.m., the local spoke with the driver and handed over the items, assuming the owner would come looking for them. The next day, after seeing news of Bobby Ann's disappearance and her last sighting at his bus stop, the driver decided to give the found items to the police. On November 22nd, the family, police, and volunteers continued searching for clues in the fields, forests, and roads around Bobby Ann's area, but found nothing, growing increasingly desperate. Then, on November 23, 2021, at 1:17 p.m., a voluntary witness's statement at the police station significantly shifted the investigation's direction. A young, well-dressed and polite man entered the station, offering information about the missing girl, expressing his wish to assist the police and her family. The officer summoned a detective to speak with him. Unaware of the bombshell about to drop, the detective listened as the man claimed he had abducted Bobby Ann from the bus stop 3 days prior and had since killed her, providing details of the alleged crime. The police, skeptical of whether to believe his story or dismiss him as a fame-seeking lunatic, placed a map before the self-confessed perpetrator, asking him to pinpoint where he left Bobby Ann. While some officers still hoped the interior design student might be alive, they rushed to the indicated location. Sadly, there was no chance of rescuing Bobby Ann. The dense underbrush impeded their advance, but as they moved forward, they found a woman's unclothed body lying face down. The state of the scene and the skin's discoloration left no doubt. The woman had died days earlier. Later, the police publicly announced that after receiving a confession from a suspect and verifying its authenticity, they had discovered a woman's lifeless body on a beach about 7 miles from the bus stop where Bobby Ann was last seen. The body was found in a wooded area and the victim had yet to be identified. However, due to the height and certain physical traits, investigators strongly believed it was Bobby Ann. While awaiting official identification, they informed the McLeod family of the discovery. The suspicions were confirmed when dental records of the victim matched those of the abducted student. The confirmation that the body was indeed that of the beloved missing student sent shockwaves through the local community. The people of Plymouth, who had actively participated in the search, were shattered by the tragic end of the case. To express their grief and support for the McLeod family, residents held a vigil near the bus stop from where Bobby Ann was taken. Overwhelmed by tears and trying to stay strong, Bobby Ann's mother thanked friends and the community for their support during the search and at the vigil honoring her daughter's memory. She regretted the sad circumstances that brought them together. With a quivering voice and shaking hands surrounded by loved ones, she delivered a prepared statement, highlighting the blessing it was to watch Bobby Ann grow up in their family. She mentioned that although her beloved daughter's life was taken too soon, the beautiful impact she had wherever she went would never be forgotten. Then, lifting her candle, she asked everyone to do the same in memory of her daughter, followed by a minute of silence. Lee, Bobby Ann's older brother, also shared his feelings, but he did so on social media, thanking her for the time they spent together and vowing never to forget her. He expressed how unjust it was for such a beautiful and talented girl to meet such a horrific and undeserved end. He shared a childhood photo of them, smiling and happy in their primary school uniforms. In the message accompanying the photo, Lee wrote that he hoped to reunite with his beloved little sister in heaven and that it was an honor to be her big brother. He promised to forever cherish the adventures and journeys they shared and wished her eternal peace. As the community and those close to Bobby Ann were still reeling from the shock of the events, the gruesome details of the crime began to emerge, stirring a mix of grief and anger among them. The forensic report highlighted the severe injuries she sustained from a blunt object, likely a hammer, revealing she had 14 serious wounds to her head and face. Contrasting with the attack's brutality, and despite her body being found unclothed, the forensic expert found no evidence of sexual assault before her death. Media outlets then disclosed the name of the alleged perpetrator of the brutal assault that ended Bobby Ann McLeod's life, identifying him as 24-year-old Cody Ackland, a musician from the same town. Following the revelation of the suspect's identity, Cody's lawyer issued a statement on his behalf, claiming full responsibility for the crime. His assertion in the statement that he had never seen the young woman before the night of the incident baffled the public, leaving the motive for such a cruel and unwarranted attack a mystery. For those who knew Cody, this news was a shocking blow, as he had never been in trouble before. However, as the investigation delved into Cody's computer, phone, and other belongings seized along with his car, they uncovered chilling aspects of his life that no one knew. Investigators found over 3,000 images on the supposedly quiet musician's phone, revealing a sinister side unknown to all. Many of these images resembled scenes from horror movies due to their disturbing and dark nature. His browsing history also showed that in the days and weeks leading up to the young woman's abduction, Cody had been researching the most heinous acts committed by serial criminals, as well as remote locations and potential weapons. In the hours before the young girl's abduction, Cody visited the website of an online sports store, browsing through baseball bats and waterproof clothing. For the investigators, the unfolding evidence seemed almost unbelievable, as Cody had been a complete unknown to them before he walked into the station with his horrific confession. He had appeared so normal that he had never attracted police attention or been involved in any trouble before. The investigators theorized that on the day of the crime, Cody succumbed to his secret desire to emulate the serial killers he idolized, leading him to commit a serious offense. They believed Bobby Ann was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, her life tragically ending due to a stranger's urge to act on his dark criminal instincts. They speculated that if Bobby Ann hadn't crossed his path, Cody might have targeted anyone else, regardless of age or gender, with his sole intent being to take a life, not necessarily to commit sexual assault. In the midst of the turmoil caused by the crime and its disturbing details, the band Cody was part of, which had recorded its first disc in August of the same year, announced on social media their decision to disband immediately. They stated that ending the band, for which Cody was the guitarist and songwriter, was an act of respect for the deceased teenager. They expressed shock over the tragedy and difficulty in coming to terms with what had happened, extending their thoughts and prayers to the family and friends of the university student who were devastated by her loss. Finally, on November 26, 2021, Cody appeared before the court, charged with murder. In the brief hearing, he was seen wearing a gray cotton sweater and a blue mask, adhering to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic health measures. He spoke only to confirm his name, address, and date of birth. The presiding magistrate informed him that he would be held in custody and face trial at the Crown Court in Plymouth. Cody was scheduled to appear at the court for a preliminary hearing to address all matters related to the case before proceeding to the actual trial. It was during the pre-trial hearings that the full extent of the horror unleashed on the day Bobby Ann and Cody's paths tragically crossed was revealed. Bobby Ann arrived at the bus shelter around 6:15 p.m. At that time, Cody, driving his Ford Fiesta, spotted her at the stop. He noted a slight resemblance between Bobby Ann and his ex-girlfriend, but he clarified that his actions were not triggered by emotional reasons or the resemblance. Instead, he had been seeking a victim to fulfill his long-standing plans. Bobby Ann, a design student, seemed the perfect target for him, so he parked on the road behind the bus stop. After stopping, he watched not only her but also the surroundings to ensure no one else was around. Then he quietly approached her with a hammer he had brought along and struck her twice on the head. Believing the blows were fatal, he returned to his car to escape, but to his astonishment, he saw that Bobby Ann was not only alive but also trying to get up from the ground. Faced with this unforeseen situation, Cody went back to the bus stop, dragged her away, and somehow managed to get her into his vehicle. He then drove her to a secluded parking area about 7 miles away. It was around 7:45 p.m. when he stopped in the midst of a wooded area, intending to dispose of the body there. What had already occurred to the innocent young woman was tragic enough, but the worst was yet to unfold. The most painful and chilling part of the story began at this point. Cody recounted that when he attempted to leave the body, he realized Bobby Ann was still alive and conscious. Despite having the opportunity to repent and seek help or take her to a hospital for medical care, Cody chose not to deviate from his original plan. He decided to remove her from the car, and at that moment, despite being attacked by him, the defenseless young woman expressed her fear to him. Cody told her he was scared too because he had never done anything like this before. Then he attacked her with the hammer, striking her 12 times in the head. He immediately set about destroying evidence, starting with burning her handbag in the woods. When he returned to where Bobby Ann lay, he was, in his words, both surprised and impressed because she was still alive, making some sounds. Admitting he admired her resilience, he said he then ended her suffering by suffocating her. Next, he placed her body in the trunk of his car and drove about 30 miles, where he hid the body after undressing her and removing her jewelry. Around 10 p.m., Cody returned home and went straight to bed. The next day, he threw the hammer into a river and disposed of a bag containing the blood-stained clothes of both him and Bobby Ann at some orchards. On November 21st, while the McLeods, police, and their community were frantically searching for the young woman, Cody was out enjoying himself. He went to a pizzeria with friends, attended a band rehearsal, and spent most of the night in a local bar. Witnesses called to testify noted that Cody seemed unusually cheerful that day, even making jokes and hugging friends. The defendant recounted that on November 22nd, he continued enjoying himself, buying sweets and going to the movies, while keeping up with the latest news and massive search efforts for Bobby Ann on his phone. However, the initial euphoria of having fulfilled his dark fantasies gradually faded. On November 23rd, Cody went to his job at a car service company where he worked as a valet. The morning was uneventful, but after his lunch break he made an unexpected turn. Cody messaged his bandmates telling them he loved them and they might not see each other for a while. He also sent a message to his mother expressing his love. Then, he went to the police station and confessed to the crime. During the police statements at the hearings, it was made clear that in addition to Cody's confession, there were numerous pieces of physical evidence collected from various locations he visited after the crime. Investigators found the victim's DNA in Cody's Ford Fiesta and on sneakers recovered at his house. As for the motive behind the crime, the detective who led the investigation noted that the suspected perpetrator refused to elaborate on his reasons. Despite attempts to get answers, Cody consistently avoided questions about why he took Bobby Ann's life. He recalled that, after surrendering, Cody told the police that the crime hadn't been on his mind, as it felt as surreal as a movie or fantasy. He later admitted he couldn't fully grasp his feelings about having taken someone's life, suggesting it felt like someone else had committed the act. Concerning Cody's mental state, a psychiatrist evaluating his fitness to stand trial uncovered a significant detail. The accused confessed to the specialist that the depressive feelings he had experienced throughout his life vanished after he killed the university student, and he no longer felt the same level of resentment as before. With all the case-related evidence presented during the pre-trial hearings, the trial proceeded in a Crown Court between April and May 2022. In the courtroom, Cody's lawyer acknowledged that while psychiatrists found his client did not have a mental illness, he had endured significant emotional difficulties throughout his life. He mentioned that Cody was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, dyslexia, and anxiety from an early age, and had battled depression for at least 7 years. He also pointed out that Cody had received little consolation or emotional support at home and found none during his school years. Regarding a father figure or other male role models, he stated that Cody had never experienced anything positive, which, in his view, explained Cody's admiration for negative male figures. In contrast, the prosecution pointed out Cody's obsession with serial killers, particularly Ted Bundy, noting the deliberate choice of a hammer as a weapon, mirroring the preference of his top-ranked criminal idol. During the sentencing hearing, the judge characterized Cody as highly dangerous, emphasizing that his interest in serial killers extended beyond morbid fascination. He highlighted the loss of Bobby Ann McLeod's potential life, describing her murder as brutal and savage, and stated that the crime not only caused outrage, but also instilled fear across the region, for which Cody must also bear responsibility. The prosecutor depicted Cody as leading a double life, driven by a pathological desire to emulate serial killers. He called for a severe sentence for the prolonged and frenzied attack against a petite, defenseless young woman who expressed fear during her ordeal. The prosecution presented a victim impact statement from the McLeod family, portraying Bobby Ann as a beautiful and bright young woman full of future plans, brutally stolen from them. They expressed that life without her was unbearable, and while acknowledging no sentence could match the severity of the crime, demanded the full extent of legal retribution. The defense attorney, on the other hand, argued for mitigation, citing Cody's voluntary surrender and confession, which provided the McLeod family with some closure and knowledge of their daughter's fate. When delivering the sentence, the judge addressed Cody directly, stating he had brutally ended the life of a wonderful young woman after a prolonged torment. He sentenced Cody to life imprisonment, setting a minimum term of 31 years before eligibility for parole. 6 months after the tragic day her life was extinguished, the time came to bid farewell to Bobby Ann McLeod. The profound impact of her case on the community and the genuine affection of the locals for the friendly and beautiful young woman and her family were once again evident. On May 26, 2022, the day of the interior design student's funeral, hundreds lined the streets of Plymouth to pay tribute as the procession passed through the city center. The hearse, covered with a blanket and plush figures of her favorite childhood characters, Lilo and Stitch, was drawn by a horse-drawn carriage. At the funeral, Bobby Ann's favorite music, alternative rock, played, and many attendees wore band t-shirts and black jeans as a nod to the beloved young woman. Out of respect, they avoided wearing ripped jeans, the fashion she donned on the day she was attacked. One of the most touching moments was when people left flowers and balloons at a memorial bench near the bus stop, where the attack and abduction occurred. Cody's obsession with one of the most notorious serial killers of the 20th century led him to commit the unthinkable. His crime shattered a family and community still mourning the loss of the delightful young woman he killed. And with this, we conclude today's episode of Unreal True Crime. Join me next time as we delve into the details of history's most horrific crimes. Goodbye.